Totality and the 10 shadows, what exactly is this capable of at its full potential? Let's talk about it, but some spoilers for JJK. And this is actually a follow-up video to something I put out a few days ago. And honestly, start there if you didn't see it, because we go into a lot of the nuts and bolts about Totality and how the 10 shadows works and whether, or not Mahoraga is still around, etc., etc. But as a follow-up to that video, Tyler sent me in a comment kind of detailing his thoughts for what he thought Totality was capable of. So to kick things off, I'm going to go over his ideas and then kind of respond to some of the things he's saying here. So bear with me here. So what Tyler says is, rather than just focusing on Mahoraga, what if the real endgame isn't about summoning the strongest creature? What if it's about breaking the system? Here's the concept. Imagine Megami destroys all of his Shikigami except Rabbit Escape. That one alone can summon hundreds or even thousands of rabbits at once, which proves the technique is capable of mass replication. So what if he uses Rabbit Escape as a loophole, summoning one of every possible combination of the 10 shadows, using totalities? Or using it just as the base so he can summon multiple at once without needing multiple base Shikigami. Each Shikigami represents a piece of a larger system. By clearing the board, he could remove their preset limits and start producing modular, hybridized summons. Instead of being locked into a few known creatures, he could create entirely new forms from the base templates, all built to serve the specific needs in real time. And there is more, but I'm going to pause there to respond to this first. So essentially the idea here is wiping out the other 9 Shikigami so that you have 9 totalities, and then basically doing all of the different, hundreds if not thousands of combinations you could do with those in Rabbit Escape to create tons of hybrids. And this might be possible, but a couple things to push back on here. One, we don't really know how Totality works. We only see it a couple times in the series, and it's not as if we get like a full breakdown, right? All we know is that when a Shikigami dies, we can use their power in a totality in a new summoning, right? But does that mean you can use any aspect of the dead Shikigami that you want and infuse it into another Shikigami? Or is there some standardized power that Shikigami becomes? For example, we know the white divine dog died. Let's say that, that totality is infused into the black divine dog, which we see in the series, right? Is that just a standard 5% attack speed increase, a 10% health buff, and you can put that in anything you want? Like, that's the white dog's totality, right? Or is the totality basically all of the component parts that made up the white dog, and you can pick and choose which aspects of it you want to infuse into the Shikigami? We don't know. Like, does Megami get a Minecraft crafting window pop up whenever he's thinking about a totality? He's like, yep, I want to take this and that and this. If so, there's obviously a wide array of things he could do. But if it is just some sort of standardized buff based on the Shikigami, again, a random example, like let's say the Mahoraga totality was just the adaptation power, which would be incredible, right? But you couldn't say like, okay, I want Mahoraga's Sword of Extermination as this part of the totality to add that on to New Wave, right? It really just depends on how much customization you actually have. I would lean toward it being some sort of standardized thing that Megami doesn't have control over, like the Orochi totality is a snake head or a snake tail that can do something, and it doesn't matter which other creature you infuse it into, like that's always what that buff is going to represent, right? So I'm losing my own train of thought here. But the point is, we don't know how modular the system is. We don't know how much complexity or customization you can actually get with totality. But let's just entertain this possibility for a moment and say that you can go crazy with it. Like, totality breaks it down into the ones and zeros, and you can basically code the new summonings to be whatever you want based on those component parts. If that is possible, I still think you're only going to be able to do one at a time, even if you are keeping Rabbit Escape as your base. And the reason for that is because Rabbit Escape is essentially hundreds of rabbits, yes, but they're all like clones of the one rabbit, you know what I mean? And only one of the rabbits is real per se. Like, only one of the rabbits has the special symbol, and if you kill that one, they all die. That being said, like, I don't think you would be able to summon 100 rabbit escapes and make each one its own totality. Like, sure, if you make a totality rabbit escape, then maybe you could have hundreds of copies of that one. But I just don't think you have the nuance of creating, 300 different rabbits that are all different combinations of things. I just don't think that's how rabbit escape works. And then another question is like, how much leeway do you have based on the base Shikigami, right? Like, if Rabbit Escape is the one that you keep alive, like, how much does it inform the totality as a whole, right? Because Rabbit Escape was very weak and its strength was that there were hundreds and you had to find the true one, right? So you might want to keep like a Nue or something else as the base Shikigami so that it is stronger. But again, these are just questions we don't really have the answer to because we didn't get to see Megami do too much with this stuff, right? But in any case, if what Tyler is describing here was possible, then this would be insanely powerful and really cool. So now, building off of that, Tyler hit me with some questions. He says, Mahoraga was the brute force option. This would be about overwhelming versatility, deception, and adaptive control. Imagine a battlefield filled with coordinated, unpredictable shadow constructs that change as the fight progresses. It's less about overpowering the enemy and more about outmaneuvering them with layered, intelligent chaos. With that level of versatility, push him into special grade territory. So I think Megami was already special grade territory. I think the 10 Shadows could be considered a special grade technique based on its full potential. But certainly, if this version of it was possible, then yes, it would absolutely be special grade. And honestly, what I think you're describing here would be my interpretation of Chimera Shadow Garden. Like, I think that's the type of thing he could be capable of within his domain expansion, because we saw he could summon multiple versions of the shadows within there. So even if the crazy rabbit escape stuff wasn't possible, I think what you're talking about could be possible in that domain if he perfected it. So yeah, easily special grade in my opinion. And then he says, could this version of Megami actually rival Gojo? And I think yes, potentially, especially if we're considering Mahoraga still being on the table, because Sukuna showed us that, right? Like, the 10 Shadows can indeed rival the Limitless, just like the, Six Eyes Limitless user and 10 Shadows user in the past fought and killed each other. Now, obviously, that Six Eyes Limitless user was no Gojo, but still, I don't think Gojo was just gassing up Megami when he was telling him, like, hey, you can be on my level. Like, you just need to, start fighting for yourself, or, I'm butchering it, but, the whole speech he gives him. So, yeah, I don't think Gojo was just lying to try and, like, boost Megami's confidence. I thought he truly believed that. So, yeah, I do think that there is, theoretically a version of Megami that could surpass Gojo. Now, will that happen? Another question, but I do think it's possible. And then he says, would combining all 10 shadows like that break the domain system? Now, I don't know exactly what you mean by that, but they would certainly be powerful. Again, speaking to your version with like the rabbits and the infinite combinations, like that's going to be a tall order for anyone to deal with, regardless if they have a domain, right? But certainly some people's domains are going to be good answers for large swaths of enemies, like Suguna's, for example. It can just eviscerate everything in a 200-meter radius. But so again, depending on what exactly you mean by that question, I'm not sure. I do think domains could still be an answer to this version of the 10 Shadows, but it's certainly powerful, right? And then could he overwhelm Sukuna with sheer unpredictability? Maybe, but Sukuna is the best of the best, you know what I mean? And again, his domain in particular is a good answer for this. And really, when it comes to like the top of the verse versus the top of the verse, it kind of depends on who's more refined, right? And, could Megami ever match Sukuna's refinement? I don't know. I still would go Sukuna probably over Max Potential Megami, but, not outside the realm of possibility, I would say. And then Tyler says, would he even need Mahoraga at that point? It kind of depends on which version of this power we're talking about, but even in this modular version with all of the rabbit escapes, I think you would want Mahoraga's totality as a part of that to really get you over the edge. Like, if you're going to beat somebody like Sukuna, you're probably going to need to adapt to those slashes, right? To have the Shikigami have any chance of surviving. So probably, but would you need Mahoraga against everyone? Probably not. Probably not even most people, but for the best of the best, probably would still be nice to have the Divine General. Would this turn the 10 Shadows into a pseudo army technique? Yeah, under those conditions, for sure. Could this explain why Sukuna wanted the technique so badly? No, I don't think so. That was just based on Mahoraga and wanting to adapt his arsenal, and really just Megami being a vessel for him. Honestly, Sukuna's initial interest in Megami, I don't think had anything to do with the Ten Shadows beyond the fact that such a powerful technique represented Megami's potential. So Sukuna realized that this kid may be able to house me. Like, this is a vessel I could perhaps jump to that will no longer be a prison for me. And then, of course, once Shibuya rolled around, he met Mahoraga, saw that his power was adaptation, realized that Gojo represented a wall he needed to get through. He put two and two together and was like, okay, maybe I can upgrade my entire kit by learning from Mahoraga. So that obviously interested him as well. But I don't think he had any interest in the technique in terms of like the power that it strictly represented. I think he always just saw it as a way to kind of upgrade his own thing. And then Tyler's final question was, would this make Megami more dangerous than his dad? And yes, easily. And honestly, I don't even think we need to go to these extremes with the potential to get Megami over Toji. Like, I think Megami will surpass Toji probably pretty soon after the end of JJK, given with where we left him and assuming that he'll be boosted the same way Yuji was boosted by Sukuna's special grade cursed energy, regardless of if we want to say Megami inherits Shrine or not. Like, I think once he, perfects his domain, like, he's probably pretty close to eclipsing Toji at that point, regardless. Oh, and then also, just since this reminded me, the anime did take a lot of liberties with Rabbit Escape. Like, in the manga, the clones aren't really capable, or we never saw them throw hands like this. So, not to devalue what a potential, like, Rabbit Escape totality mass thing could be, but the clones might not even actually be able to do things the same way the original could, right? So even if we keep Rabbit Escape as the one and only we get to kind of get the shadow clone jutsu, as it were, the clones may be worthless other than distractions, even if they do have, all of these other totalities infused into them. It just depends on like how the base Rabbit Escape actually is supposed to work. Like, are they just purely, paper thin clones that are distractions, or can they actually represent a threat? This has been insane levels of 10 Shadows Yap. Do you guys like these videos? I mean, maybe they're not even different from my standard videos, but for me, I feel like I've just been rambling for 10 minutes straight. So let me know if you guys don't like this type or if this type's chill. But I also got a couple of other questions about the 10 Shadows, so I figured I'd throw these in here as well. So shout out to Blazing Fast who asked me this. And he wanted to know my thoughts on Mahoraga versus the other 9 Shikigami in a 1-on-9 matchup. And also Mahoraga versus all of the Shikigami totalitied into one. And in both cases, I think Mahoraga slams. Like, he's just the crown jewel, so much stronger than all of the other ones. This is also part of the reason that I think it requires a domain expansion to tame Mahoraga. Like, I don't really think there's anything you can do with the other 9 Shikigami that represent a good, clean way to take him out. And we've talked about some ideas in videos before, like the piercing ox treadmill and stuff like that. So, like, maybe it's possible, but even in that case, like, I think you would need a sorcerer that's kind of like pulling the strings and also doing things to help defeat Mahoraga. So in a vacuum, just the Shikigami themselves, again, whether they're totality or in a 9v1 situation, I just don't think they stand a chance against Mahoraga. Anyways, that's going to do it for this one. Again, shout out to Tyler and Blazing. Thank you guys so much, and I'll see you in the next one.